In the rain-slick streets of a city built on secrets, investigative journalist Mara Ellis had always chased the truth with unyielding trust. Her closest confidant, Elias Quinn, a steady hand in the shadows of corruption. But when that trust fractured like glass under pressure, it unleashed a storm of doubt that still haunts her nights, pulling her back to the whispers of old conversations that hid more than they revealed, as she sits alone with the weight of what might have been buried forever. The dim glow of Mara's laptop screen flickered across her cluttered desk, casting shadows like half-formed doubts on the walls of her high-rise apartment. Rain lashed the window panes, a relentless patter syncing with the archived audio spilling from her headphones. She leaned back in her chair, eyes half closed, as her own voice from 2 years ago filled the room, crisp, trusting, laced with that old fire. And Elias, you always say the truth hides in the silences. So tell me, what's one secret you've kept that could change everything? Her younger self, probing, alive with shared conspiracies. The footage played, muted on a second screen. Grainy clips of them huddled in a rain-slicked alley. Elias's hand on her shoulder, his laugh cutting through the downpour like a promise. Water had beaded on the recorder then, distorting the edges of their words, turning confessions into something fragile, warped by the storm. Mara's fingers tightened on the armrest. Nervous anticipation coiled in her chest, a live wire humming. She fast-forwarded, skipping to the part where he'd leaned in close, voice dropping. Trust me, Mara, this story's bigger than us. Lies. All of it. Or were they? The rain outside mirrored the static in her mind. Those soaked recordings, the only relics that hadn't fully evaporated. Truth, bent but not broken. Voices echoing through the wet veil. A soft chime pierced the audio. Her screen blinked. New encrypted message. From him. Elias. The alias Shadowbridge stared back. Innocuous, yet loaded. Heart thudding, she hesitated. Cursor hovering. Decode? The conflict gnawed. Old trust clashing with fresh scars. His words from the past bleeding into this digital ghost. What if it was another deflection? Another layer to peel? She clicked. The file unfolded in fragments. The bridge isn't shattered yet. Meet where the rain remembers. But ask yourself, am I the villain or the warning? No signature, just coordinates flickering like a half-lit skyline. Mara exhaled sharply, pulling off the headphones. The archived voices faded, but the rain-soaked hum lingered in her ears, a symbol of truths half-drowned. Anxiety twisted into focus, her mind sharpening like a lens in the downpour. Who was Elias now? The betrayer she'd buried, or something redeemable? And this next contact, worth the risk of another crack? She stood, grabbing her coat, the city's moody pulse calling her out. Deeper she went, thoughts racing ahead into the night. As the night deepened, the city sprawled below like a glittering wound, neon veins pulsing under a bruised sky. Mara climbed the fire escape to the rooftop, her boots scraping metal rungs slick with impending rain. Elias waited in the shadows of the HVAC unit, collar turned up against the chill wind, his silhouette sharp against the distant hum of traffic. She didn't waste breath on greetings. The messages stopped after the leak. You fed me half-truths about the merger, then vanished. Why the inconsistencies? The timeline doesn't add up. Naomi's side says you knew about the payoffs months before you tipped me off. Elias shifted, hands jammed in his pockets, eyes flicking to the horizon where storm clouds gathered. He stepped forward, gravel crunching underfoot, closing the gap just enough to make her pulse quicken. You think it's that simple? Digging up dirt on the conglomerates was never clean, Mara. I gave you what you needed to start. Bullshit. She pulled out her phone, thumbed play on a voice recording. His voice, distorted by static, promising alliance in a rain-lashed alley weeks ago. The tinny echo cut through the wind. We trust each other on this. Now, droplets began to patter on the rooftop, soaking the device in her grip, warping the audio like a confession half drowned. She jabbed a finger at him. This isn't protection. It's deflection. Who's pulling your strings now? He glanced at the phone, rain beating on his lashes, and for a split second, his mask cracked, jaw tight, gaze evasive. He lunged forward, not touching her, but snatching her wrist to stop the playback. Turn it off. You want the full story? It ends with someone else bleeding for it. Not Naomi, not me. Mara yanked free, distrust coiling in her chest like the rising storm. But she held his stare, resolve hardening her voice. Then who? Tell me, Elias. If you're shielding the innocent, prove it. Before I expose every loose end. He backed away. Rain, now sheeting down, blurring the city lights into smears. Expose what you want. But if you push, that danger finds them first. Walk away, Mara. For once, trust the silence. He turned, vanishing down the stairwell, leaving her alone with the sodden recording looping faintly. We trust each other. A question, echoing unanswered. Whom was he guarding? And what betrayal would it cost her next? Days later, back in the quiet aftermath, the dim apartment smelled of stale coffee and regret. Rain pattering against the window like insistent fingers. Mara sat on the edge of a worn couch, recorder glinting between them, its red light a tiny accusation. Naomi perched opposite, arms crossed, her face half-shadowed by a lamp's weak glow. The air hung heavy, thick with the ghosts of their shared past. Late nights chasing leads, laughter over cheap wine. You remember that stakeout on the waterfront? Mara said, voice tight, restrained fury coiling in her chest. We were unbreakable then. Solid. What happened to that, Naomi? Why'd you feed my notes to the suits? Naomi's eyes flicked away, landing on the far wall where a mirror hung, its surface cracked from some forgotten slam. Jagged lines, spider webbing like fault lines in trust. She traced the fracture with her gaze, fingers twitching in her lap. Solid. We were kids playing at heroes. Fear got in the way, pressure from above. It twisted everything. I didn't mean to. Twisted. Mara's knuckles whitened on the recorder. Anger simmered, not explosive, but a slow burn, scorching the edges of her questions. You sold me out. My story, our story. Gutted because you balanced loyalties like it was a game. Elias warned me you'd flip. Was he right? Naomi leaned forward, voice a whisper edged with resentment. Elias, he talks like he knows betrayal's poetry. I was scared, Mara. Scared of losing the job, the life we'd built. They promised it'd protect us both, said your digging would drag us all down. But I see it now, how it poisoned everything. Her words layered defense over deflection, resentment flickering like the rain's rhythm outside. Mara's breath caught, the anger cracking, revealing glimpses beneath. Naomi's eyes, hollowed by the same weight she carried. Not just a traitor, but a mirror of her own fractures. Protect us. You left me exposed, alone in the fallout. But as Naomi's shoulders slumped, the guarded wall thinning, a cautious sympathy stirred in Mara. Fear in those words, raw and echoing her own. Was this the redemption Naomi chased, or another manipulation? The broken mirror caught Mara's reflection, splintered, multiple selves staring back, questioning. Naomi reached out, hand hovering, then retreating. We could rebuild something. Not the old way. Boundaries, maybe. If you let me explain more. Mara silenced the recorder. The room falling to breaths and rain. Could she step closer without shattering? In the following session, seeking clarity amid the turmoil, the mirrored walls of Dr. Voss's clinic caught fragments of Mara's reflection, fractured, multiplying her unease, like echoes in a rain-slicked alley. She sat rigid on the edge of the leather chair, fingers twisting the hem of her coat, the air thick with the scent of chamomile tea gone cold. Voss leaned back, her calm gaze a steady anchor, notepad balanced on her knee like a silent witness. Tell me about the father again, Mara pressed, voice edged with demand. The one who promised the world and left with the dawn. Decode it for me, Lena. Why does it keep bleeding into everything? Voss tilted her head, her pen pausing mid-air. Memories aren't codes to crack, Mara. They're patterns. What if we look at how they shadow your work now? Elias's messages, those encrypted ghosts. Do they feel like echoes of that abandonment? Mara's breath hitched, a sharp inhale that pulled her deeper into herself. Alienation coiled in her chest, cold and familiar, pushing her to build walls higher. Don't deflect. This is about me, not the story. He swore he'd stay, then vanished. Just like Elias. I need to understand why I let them in. The doctor's eyes flicked to the shelf behind her, where the glass bridge figurine gleamed under the soft lamp, a delicate arch, translucent and taut, spanning an invisible chasm. Mara followed her gaze, the object catching the light like a frozen raindrop. It trembled slightly in her mind's eye, one wrong touch away from shattering. Voss's voice softened, not probing, but inviting. See that bridge? It's held together by tension, not force. Your childhood, those breaks, they taught you to cross alone. But alliances, Mara, they're rebuilt step by step. What if revisiting Elias isn't betrayal's rerun, but a chance to test the span? Mara's shoulders eased, just a fraction, the ice in her veins thawing to a wary trickle. She leaned forward, eyes tracing the figurine's fragile curve. Fear flickered, not as a wall, but a signal, urging adjustment. Maybe, but every step feels like it could drop me through. Voss nodded, the mirrors reflecting their shared silence, layers shifting. Trust, cracked, but not collapsed, hung between them, demanding care. How far would those old fractures bend before they reformed her choices? Later that evening, doubts lingering, Mara hunched over the editing bay in the dim glow of her studio apartment, the city's rain drumming against the window like impatient fingers. The footage of Naomi Reyes flickered on the screen, her former friend, eyes downcast in that rooftop interview months ago, voice cracking on the edge of confession. We were allies once, Naomi had said, the words hanging in the humid air. Mara paused the tape, rewinding to the moment Naomi's hand trembled on her coffee cup. Something gnawed at her. She scrubbed forward, frame by frame. There, a splice. Naomi's hesitant admission about the leaked documents cut seamlessly into a later segment, where her tone sharpened, defensive. I had no choice. But the lighting shifted, the background rain intensifying, unnaturally. Edits, not hers. Mara's pulse quickened, suspicion coiling in her gut like smoke. Who had tampered with this? The original raw file, pulled from the archive, showed Naomi pausing longer, her eyes flicking away, as if weighing a deeper secret. Elias knew. The unedited voice whispered, then dissolved into static. Elias. The name ignited a fresh spark of distrust. Those encrypted messages from him, layered over old tapes, his voice, a ghost in the rain, had pulled her back in, promising redemption. But now, this reframing turned Naomi's remorse into evasion, painting her as complicit rather than cornered. Mara leaned closer, the screen's blue light carving shadows across her face. Her mind raced. Was this his handiwork, protecting some larger lie? Or Naomi's, burying the truth to salvage her own skin? The control frame blurred on the monitor, edges softening like melting glass. A hazy reminder that every narrative was a fragile construct. One wrong cut, and the bridge between words and intent shattered. She sat back, breath shallow, the old lie echoing. Vigilance keeps the hurt at bay. But this wasn't blind suspicion. It was intuition sharpened by scars, demanding facts over fear. No more automatic walls. She'd cross-reference the timestamps, trace the metadata back to its source. If Elias was weaving this web, she'd unravel it, not to sever ties, but to renegotiate them on ground she could stand. The rain outside blurred into the screen's haze, truth submerged in montage, demanding constant vigilance. Who held the scissors, and for whose trusted end? Mara hit play, resolve, hardening her jaw. The investigation deepened, one edited breath at a time. As the backlash intensified in the wake of the leaks, Mara's apartment hummed with the low drone of rain against the window, a relentless patter that blurred the city lights into smears of neon. She sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop balanced on her knees, scrolling through the storm that had erupted online. Hashtags like Mara Lies and Trust the Traitor trended, fueled by leaked audio snippets. Her voice, sharp and probing, twisted out of context into accusations she never made. Her phone buzzed first, a text from her editor. Office now, investors pulling funding over this mess. Confidence, that brittle shield she'd forged from years of digging up truths, cracked under the weight. She'd been so sure, piecing together the betrayals like puzzle pieces, her caution a fortress. But now, the leaks had multiplied overnight. Anonymous posts dissecting her interviews, painting her as the villain who pried too deep. Another vibration, a call from an unknown number. She let it ring, but the voicemail icon blinked. "You think you're exposing us? We'll bury you first." Threats, not accusations, but they landed like blows. The project stalled in her mind. No more leads, just echoes of what she'd lost control of. A knock at the door. It was Sarah, her closest friend from the newsroom days, face tight with discomfort. "Mara, people are talking. I can't be seen with you right now. It's not personal." The words hung, a quiet severance. Mara nodded, throat dry, as Sarah slipped away into the rain-slicked hall. Naomi's last message, unread for hours, now felt like a frayed thread. "We need to talk, but not like this." Only Dr. Voss's steady invitation lingered in her inbox, a lifeline amid the unraveling. She reached for the old recorder on the coffee table, its casing cool and damp from the storm she'd let in earlier. Pressing play, rain-soaked voices filled the room. Elias's confession from months ago, warped by static, words bleeding into the downpour. "Trust isn't a bridge," he'd said, his tone layered with something she couldn't quite hear then. Now, it mocked her vigilance. Her caution hadn't shielded her. It had blinded her to how fear steered every choice, every hesitation. The screen glowed with fresh vitriol, her certainty dissolving into a fog of doubt. How to weather this exposure without shattering entirely? The rain drummed on, recordings whispering possibilities she wasn't ready to face. Pushed to confront the heart of it once more, rain lashed the rooftop like a confession too long withheld, turning the city below into a smeared mosaic of lights. Mara gripped the recorder in her fist, its red light blinking like an accusatory eye. Elias stood across from her, collar turned up against the downpour, his face a mask of shadows under the sodium glow. "You sold me out," she spat, voice slicing through the storm. Anger boiled in her chest, hot and unyielding. "For what? Your precious sources. I trusted you, Elias. We built this together." He didn't flinch. Water traced rivulets down his jaw, pooling at his feet. "You think it was personal? Mara, it was survival." His words hung, deliberate, pulling her closer, despite the fury. She advanced, boots splashing in puddles that reflected fractured neon. "Survival? You leaked my notes to that shark at the Tribune, buried my leads. For survival?" Her breath came sharp, fists clenched. The anger was a shield, familiar and fierce. Elias's eyes met hers, steady in the chaos. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small object, glistening, delicate, a glass figurine, shaped like a bridge, arched and translucent. He held it out, rain beating on its surface. "This was yours, from that trip to Prague. You said it reminded you of us, fragile, but spanning the gaps." She froze, the sight yanking at old wounds. Her hand trembled as she took it, the cool weight grounding her rage. Don't weaponize memories." "It's not a weapon," he said, voice low, urgent. "I betrayed you to shield someone, a whistleblower. Their name alone could topple Apex Corp, expose the rot we've both chased. If I'd told you, they'd come for us both. For you." The words landed like cracks in ice. Mara's grip tightened on the figurine, its edges biting her palm. Anger ebbed, replaced by a dizzying swirl. Confusion threading through her veins. Why him? Why now? The bridge in her hand felt alive, teetering on the edge of shatter. "You chose them over me," she whispered, the storm mirroring her turmoil. Truth, or what? Protection. Elias stepped closer, rain blurring the space between. "Both, or neither. You decide what breaks next." She stared at the glass span, its fragility mocking her. Sacrifice for truth, or for people? The choice loomed, unanswered, as thunder rolled in the distance. With revelations unfolding, the mirrored room in Dr. Voss's clinic gleamed under the low hum of fluorescent lights, walls reflecting infinite versions of Mara, each one wary, arms crossed, eyes sharp as shattered glass. She sat rigid on the edge of the leather chair, the air thick with the scent of rain from her coat, still damp from the alley sprint. Dr. Voss had stepped out for coffee, leaving the space to echo with silence. But Mara knew better than to trust the quiet. The door clicked open. Naomi Reyes slipped in, bruised, purple blooming under her left eye, lips split like a confession already bleeding out. No coat, just a thin jacket clinging to her frame, hands trembling as she clutched a crumpled envelope. Mara's pulse spiked, suspicion coiling tight in her chest. "You shouldn't be here," Mara said, voice low, edged. "Not after what you did." Naomi didn't flinch. She crossed the room in 3 strides, her reflection fracturing across the mirrors. Dozens of Naomis, all haunted, all raw. "I know," she whispered, dropping into the chair opposite. Her eyes locked on Mara's, unblinking. "I weaponized your trust, Mara. Used it like a shield to survive him, the real one pulling strings. Elias was just the messenger boy. You were my way out, and I dragged you under to keep my head above water." Mara's breath caught, the words landing like punches. She leaned forward, fists clenched on her knees. "Survival. You sold me out to that conglomerate snake, leaked my notes, twisted my story into their spectacle. How is that not the end?" Naomi's laugh was bitter, short, a bark that echoed off the mirrors, multiplying the pain. She slid the envelope across the table. Because it's not over. This is his address. The penthouse, where it all funnels. The real perpetrator. I've been running since, piecing it together. I need you. We expose him together. Or he buries us both. The paper stared up at Mara, innocuous, yet loaded. Like a bridge figurine, teetering on the edge. Her mind raced. Betrayal's sting fresh. The old wound reopening. Could she? The mirrors caught her hesitation, showing a woman fractured, each reflection whispering doubt. Naomi's bruises weren't props. They were proof, vulnerable and real. Mara's guard cracked, just a hair, suspicion thawing into something fragile, a trembling hope flickering in her chest. She reached for the envelope, fingers brushing Naomi's. "All right," Mara said, voice steadying. "But new rules. No more shadows." Naomi nodded, the tension easing like a held breath released. In the mirrors, their reflections aligned for the first time. Two women, scarred but standing. Yet the question lingered, unspoken in the glass. Could forgiveness bridge this chasm, if it led to light? As the pieces aligned toward publication, the conference room hummed with the low buzz of fluorescent lights, casting stark shadows across the polished table. Mara sat at the head, her fingers tracing the edge of a tablet displaying blurred interview clips. Naomi's hesitant gaze, Elias's evasive smirk. Across from her, producers Lena Hargrove and Tom Ruiz leaned forward, eyes sharp as switchblades. Dr. Voss occupied the corner chair, her posture a quiet anchor, notebook balanced on her knee. "Names or no names?" Hargrove cut in, voice like gravel. "The exposé needs teeth, Mara. Leak those details, and it goes viral. Protect them, and it's just another whisper in the wind." Mara's pulse quickened, doubt coiling in her chest like smoke. She glanced at the small glass figurine on the table, a bridge, delicate arches frozen in crystal, a gift from Voss after their last session. It caught the light, refracting her wavering reflection into fractured lines. Naming Elias would shatter his fragile shield, expose Naomi's remorse as complicity, but bury it, and the truth curdled into half-lies, echoing her father's old deceptions. Voss tilted her head, voice steady. "What bridges are you crossing here, Mara? Or burning?" Ruiz snorted. "Bridges? This is journalism, not therapy. The public demands blood. Elias's betrayal, Naomi's pivot. Contextualize all you want, but without specifics, it's fluff." Mara's throat tightened. Doubt clawed deeper. Reveal everything, and she'd orphan the connections she'd clawed back. Naomi's tentative olive branch, Elias's whispered warnings. Hide it, and she'd betray herself. The story's core. Her hand hovered over the figurine, thumb brushing its cool spine. One tap, and it could splinter. "No," she said finally, the word emerging sharp, resolute. "We frame the betrayals without the guillotine. Elias shielded someone. Hint at the cost, not the culprit. Naomi's role? Tie it to redemption's edge. Let viewers see the human fracture. Truth isn't a bomb. It's a mirror." Hargrove's brow furrowed. "You're softening it. Why?" "Because annihilation isn't clarity," Mara replied, resolve hardening her gaze. She met Voss's eyes, then Ruiz's. "I've acknowledged Elias's gamble. It saved lives, even if it gutted mine. Naomi gets a path forward. Transparent accountability, no more shadows. This way, the story connects, doesn't just cut." The room stilled, breaths sinking in the hush. Voss nodded subtly, a faint smile tracing her lips. The glass bridge gleamed untouched, its arches holding against the glare. As they wrapped, Mara pocketed the figurine, its weight a quiet promise. Could she rebuild without the shatter? The question lingered, unanswered, in the rain-slicked city beyond the windows. In the final reflection, the mirrored walls of Dr. Voss's clinic gleamed under the soft, recessed lights, turning the room into an infinite echo chamber of faces and fragments. Mara sat across from her, fingers twisting the edge of her notebook, the weight of the final recordings pressing like unseen hands on her chest. Rain pattered against the window, a distant rhythm underscoring her pulse. Quick, unsteady. "I think I have it," Mara said, her voice catching, a tremor betraying the knot in her gut. She glanced at her reflection splintered across the panels, eyes shadowed, jaw tight. The story, but publishing it. I have to decide who gets the pieces. Naomi's testimony, it's raw, could shatter her if it leaks wrong. And Elias, God, after everything, do I shield him too, or expose the whole chain? Dr. Voss leaned forward slightly, her calm gaze unwavering, a steady anchor in the multiplying mirrors. No judgment, just that quiet invitation. What stops you from laying it all bare? Mara's breath hitched. It's mine to give on terms. A pause, the rain softening to a hush. In the mirrors, Mara's face shifted, lines easing, light catching the resolve in her eyes. Voss smiled faintly, her own reflection steady beside the hero's evolving one. You've named the fear. Now you're building around it. Mara nodded, a quiet serenity settling in her bones. Like the calm after a storm's confession, the mirrors held her whole now, not broken, but layered, resilient. Yet, as she gathered her things, the question lingered, unspoken in the glass. How far does this conscious trust stretch before it mirrors back betrayal once more?